The 131st constitutional amendment has collapsed on the floor of the Lok Sabha. On paper, the bill had a clear, universally popular objective: to guarantee that women hold 33% of all parliamentary seats in time for the upcoming 2029 national elections. A version of this women's reservation law actually passed back in 2023, but that original legislation had built-in delays, stipulating that the quotas wouldn't take effect until after a new census is completed in 2026, effectively pushing actual representation a decade down the road. Accelerating that timeline required a formal tweak to the Constitution. Clearing a massive hurdle, a strict two-thirds majority in Parliament, a threshold the ruling government simply did not have without direct support from the opposition benches. Why would the opposition choose to vote down legislation that promised to put more women in power years ahead of schedule? This fast-tracked reservation timeline was legally tethered to another bill, containing the most explosive concept in Indian politics: delimitation. Delimitation is the formal process of redrawing electoral boundaries to reflect current population data. As populations shift, districts are resized so that each member of parliament represents roughly the same number of voters. For decades, this process has generated intense geographical anxiety. Southern states have successfully implemented family planning and controlled their population growth. Now, they fear that under a new delimitation exercise, they will be penalized for that success, losing proportional seats in parliament to the more populous and rapidly growing northern states. To calm these fears, the government mounted a highly specific mathematical defense on the parliament floor. Led by Home Minister Amit Shah, they argued that the South's political influence was entirely safe. This chart shows Amit Shah's proposal to dramatically expand the overall size of the Lok Sabha, with the total number of parliamentary seats jumping from the current 543 up to a massive new benchmark of 816. Under this expanded model, the raw number of seats in the South increases significantly. Karnataka goes from 28 seats to 42, Andhra Pradesh rises from 25 to 38, and Telangana jumps from 17 to 26. The rest of the southern bloc follows the exact same upward trajectory. Kerala scales from 20 seats to 30, and Tamil Nadu's representation expands from 39 up to 59 seats. When you consolidate those numbers, the 5 southern states increase their total seats from 129 to 195. More importantly, Shah stated that despite the massive nationwide expansion, the South's overall proportional share of parliament would actually inch up slightly, from 23.76% to 23.87%. If the math works out perfectly, and the southern states don't lose any ground, why did the opposition benches still refuse to back the legislation? The problem wasn't the numbers themselves, but where those numbers lift. Every single specific seat guarantee, ratio, and percentage that Amit Shah pitched was completely missing from the text of the actual bill. The opposition argued that political assurances made during a speech carry zero weight in constitutional law. A verbal promise today cannot legally bind a redrawing commission years in the future. The intensity of this pushback was highly visible, with members of parliament from Tamil Nadu arriving in black shirts specifically to protest the deliberate omission of those ratios. They issued a clear ultimatum. Until the mathematical protections for regional representation were explicitly codified in the text of the constitutional amendment, they would withhold the votes required to pass it. The government offered political math. The opposition demanded constitutional law. Faced with that gap, the opposition prioritized an ironclad legal guarantee for their states over a fast-tracked timeline for women's representation. Without those written guarantees, the opposition held their ground. The two-thirds majority failed to materialize, and the legislative package collapsed entirely. Consequently, the push to reach 33% female representation by the 2029 elections died with it. The timeline now defaults back to the original schedule, stalling any quotas until after the delayed 2026 census. While the ruling party suffered a highly public legislative defeat, the fallout extends far beyond a single failed vote. The underlying tension over delimitation has been dragged completely out of the shadows. The battle lines over demographic anxiety between northern and southern states are now starkly defined on the national stage. Heading into the next decade, the central political conflict in India is no longer restricted to which party can win an election under the current rules. The fight is over the structural map itself and how political power will be distributed across entirely redrawn borders. A legislative effort that was outwardly about elevating women's voices has ultimately ignited the defining constitutional battle over the future of southern India's political survival.